Welcome back to last video before bed. Today we'll be reading Poor People Dating Rich Experiences stories from Reddit. Let's get started. Dating someone wealthy when you've come from a background of financial struggles can be a surreal experience to say the least. I had the chance to date a guy from a well-off family during my college years, and it opened my eyes to a whole new world. First, it was thrilling. He introduced me to fine dining, luxury vacations, and experiences I never thought I'd have, like attending exclusive events and staying at five-star hotels. I was swept away by the glamour and the lifestyle, and I found myself enjoying things I'd only seen in movies. It was exciting to be part of that world, and I felt like I was living in a dream. However, the differences in our backgrounds often created a divide that was hard to ignore. While I was used to budgeting every dollar and making sacrifices, he had a more carefree attitude about money. I would feel guilty sometimes when he wanted to splurge on something extravagant like a weekend getaway or a fancy dinner, while I was just trying to make sure I could pay my bills. It also became clear that our values and priorities were shaped by our experiences. While I valued practicality and saving for the future, he had a more relaxed approach to finances. This sometimes led to misunderstandings and tension between us, as I struggled to reconcile my frugal habits with his spending habits. Social dynamics were another challenge. I found myself in situations where I felt out of place among his wealthy friends, who often discussed topics that felt foreign to me. There were times I felt judged for my background, and it made me self-conscious. It was a constant reminder of the disparities between us, even though he was incredibly supportive and never looked down on me. In the end, while the relationship was filled with amazing experiences, it also highlighted the challenges of bridging two very different worlds. We ultimately parted ways, but I learned a lot about myself, my values, and the importance of finding someone who shares similar perspectives on life. It was a unique experience, and while it had its ups and downs, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Dating someone from a wealthy background when you come from a more modest upbringing can be a roller coaster of emotions, and my experience was no different. I dated a guy whose family was quite affluent, and while our relationship was filled with love, it was complicated by the resentment his family had toward me because of my financial background. At first, when we started dating, it felt magical. He treated me like a queen, always planning thoughtful dates that introduced me to a lifestyle I had only dreamed of. I remember the first time he took me to a fancy restaurant, one with white tablecloths and a sommelier who recommended wine pairings. I was nervous, unsure of how to navigate such an elegant setting, but he made me feel at ease. He smiled and held my hand across the table, making me feel like I belonged there. As we dined on exquisite dishes, I marveled at how different everything was from my usual routine of casual eateries and home-cooked meals. Our weekends were filled with lavish parties at his friends' homes, where the champagne flowed freely and laughter echoed throughout the halls. I was introduced to a circle of people who lived in a completely different world, one filled with designer clothes and extravagant vacations. I remember one trip we took to an upscale resort for a long weekend. It was a place I had only seen in magazines, and the experience was surreal. I felt like I was living in a dream, swimming in infinity pools and enjoying gourmet meals prepared by top chefs. We had a great connection, and I felt like I could be myself around him, sharing my dreams and aspirations without the fear of judgment. However, things took a turn when I met his family. From the moment I stepped into his family home, I could sense the tension in the air. It was a grand mansion adorned with art and expensive furniture, but the warmth I had expected was absent. His parents were polite but distant, and as soon as we entered, I could feel their scrutinizing gazes on me. I quickly learned that they disapproved of our relationship. They made snide comments about my lack of refinement, and seemed to believe that I was only interested in him for his money. It hurt deeply, especially because I genuinely loved him and had no interest in his wealth. I was there for him, not the lifestyle. Despite their disapproval, he stood by me. He would defend me fiercely against their criticism, insisting that I was a good person and that my background didn't define who I was. I appreciated his unwavering support. It meant the world to me. But it was heartbreaking to see how much strain it put on him. He often felt caught in the middle, wanting to make his family happy while also wanting to be with someone he loved. I could see the stress etched on his face during family gatherings, where he would try to ease the tension while also trying to reassure me that everything would be okay. As time went on, the tension only escalated. Family gatherings became uncomfortable, with his parents constantly trying to undermine me. They would question my education and my career aspirations, making me feel small and out of place. At one of their holiday dinners, his mother made a comment about me working part-time while pursuing my degree, suggesting that real ambition comes with a full-time job and a prestigious internship. I tried to rise above it, reminding myself that their opinions didn't matter, but it was exhausting. I could see how much it affected my boyfriend. He felt torn between two worlds, and it was painful to watch the toll it took on him. Eventually, I began to withdraw from social events, feeling like an outsider in a world that should have felt welcoming. I stopped attending family gatherings, thinking it might ease the pressure on him. But each time he went alone, I could feel the distance growing between us. Our conversations began to shift. Instead of dreaming about our future together, we started to discuss the mounting tension and the emotional strain it was causing. It was a heavy weight to carry, and I could sense that he was beginning to question whether our relationship could survive the disapproval of his family. Ultimately, we had to confront the reality of our situation. One evening, as we sat in his favorite coffee shop, he looked at me with a heavy heart. It became clear that his family would never accept me, and I didn't want to be the reason for any further conflict in his life. After a long and tearful conversation, we reluctantly decided to part ways. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but I knew it was the right one for both of us. Looking back, I cherish the love we shared and the way he fought for me. Our relationship taught me a lot about love, loyalty, and the complexities of family dynamics. While it was painful, it also made me stronger and more self-aware. Dating someone from a wealthy family when you come from a less privileged background can be a mixed bag of emotions. And my experience during the 2022 holiday season really brought that to the forefront. I had been dating a wonderful girl whose family was quite affluent, and while our relationship was filled with love and support, the holidays highlighted some significant differences in our lifestyles. Leading up to Christmas, I was excited to spend time with her family. They had a tradition of hosting lavish holiday parties, complete with gourmet food, beautifully wrapped gifts, and a stunningly decorated home. I found it all so enchanting but also intimidating. As someone who had always been mindful of every dollar spent, I couldn't shake the feeling that I would be out of place among all the luxury. When I received my gifts from her family, I was genuinely touched. They went above and beyond, giving me high-quality items that I could never have afforded. There were designer clothes, gadgets, and even some fun experiences like tickets to events I'd been wanting to attend. I felt so grateful, yet a nagging sense of guilt crept in. I couldn't help but think about what I would give them in return. As Christmas approached, I struggled with what to get her family. I knew they were used to the best of the best, and I felt a tremendous amount of pressure to somehow match their generosity. I wanted to show my appreciation, but my budget was limited. I ended up opting for a few small, thoughtful gifts, handmade items, and a few local delicacies that I thought they might enjoy. Deep down, I felt it was inadequate compared to the extravagant gifts they were giving me. On Christmas morning, as we gathered around the tree, I watched her family unwrap their gifts with excitement and joy. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and warmth, but I couldn't shake my discomfort. When it was my turn, I opened their gifts, smiling and thanking them profusely, but inside I felt a weight in my chest. I couldn't help but feel embarrassed when it was time for my gifts to them. I could see their genuine appreciation for my humble offerings, but it still stung knowing that my gifts weren't on the same level as what they had given me. Her family was kind and gracious, never making me feel less than, but I could sense their surprise at the simplicity of my gifts. I wished I could have reciprocated in a way that felt more equal. It made me realize how stark the differences were between our worlds, and I found myself questioning if I truly belonged in this relationship. Later, during a quiet moment with my girlfriend, I opened up about how I felt. To my relief, she understood completely. She reassured me that the value of a gift isn't solely based on its price tag, but rather the thought and effort behind it. She emphasized that her family cared about the sentiment, and they appreciated me for who I was, not what I could give. Her support helped ease my insecurities, but the experience left a lasting impact. I learned a lot about the importance of communication and the different ways people express love and gratitude. It also reinforced my understanding of how wealth can create unintentional divides, even in relationships that are otherwise strong. While the holidays were challenging, they ultimately brought us closer together. I realized that love transcends material gifts, and it's the connection and understanding that truly matter. It was a valuable lesson, and even though I still felt the weight of my background, I knew that our relationship was built on something much deeper than financial differences. Dating someone from a wealthy background can be a whirlwind of experiences, and I certainly had my share of eye-opening moments throughout my relationship with my rich boyfriend. Growing up in a modest household, I learned early on the value of hard work, which included my time spent working at KFC during high school. Those experiences shaped my perspective on life and instilled in me a strong sense of empathy, especially after facing my fair share of disrespect from customers who often didn't think twice about their words. So, when I started dating him, I was excited about the new experiences we could share, but I was also a bit apprehensive about how our vastly different backgrounds would mesh together. One day we decided to grab a quick bite at McDonald's, thinking it would be a fun, casual outing to break up our routine. He was in a rush that day, and I thought it would be a simple way to enjoy each other's company. However, the moment we walked through the doors, things took a seriously unexpected turn. The worker at the counter, a young guy who seemed overwhelmed and a bit flustered, mixed up our order. It was a pretty minor mistake, something that could happen to anyone, but instead of being understanding, my boyfriend made a big scene. He rolled his eyes in irritation, snapped at the worker in front of a line of customers, and made a particularly snide comment about how it must be hard to keep track of orders when you work at a place like this. I was taken aback, feeling the heat of embarrassment wash over me as I watched the poor guy's face drop. Here I was, standing next to someone I cared for deeply, and yet I felt like I was witnessing a complete disregard for another person's dignity right before my eyes. Having worked in fast food myself, I couldn't help but remember all the times I had been treated poorly by customers who thought they were above it all. It hurt to see someone being disrespected in such a blatant way, and I felt my heart race as I grappled with the injustice unfolding in front of me. I simply couldn't sit by and let it happen without saying something. With a mix of anger and determination, I turned to him and said, "You know, that's really not cool. That guy is just trying to do his job. I used to work in fast food and I know how tough it can be." I could see the surprise in his eyes, and for a moment he didn't respond. My words seemed to hang in the air, and I could feel the tension between us building. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, I continued, "If you can't treat people with respect, I don't think I can be in a relationship with you. I'm serious." It was a bold move and I knew it could backfire, but I felt it was necessary. I didn't want to be with someone who looked down on others simply because of their job or financial status. My values meant too much to me, and I hoped he would understand that. After a moment of silence, he finally glanced back at the worker, who was clearly uncomfortable and trying to ignore the situation. My boyfriend's expression shifted from annoyance to a kind of realization, and he took a deep breath. "You're right. I'm sorry," he said, his tone softer than before. He turned back to the worker and said, "I'm really sorry for being rude. That was uncalled for." Then, in a surprising twist, he pulled out a substantial amount of cash and handed it to the worker, saying, "Here, this is for you. Keep the change." The worker looked stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief, and then he broke into a grateful smile, clearly appreciating the unexpected act of kindness. I felt a rush of relief wash over me. My boyfriend had made a significant step in that moment, not just by apologizing, but by taking action to make amends for his behavior. From that day forward, I noticed a tangible change in him. He began to become more aware of his words and actions, especially towards people who worked in service roles. We had numerous conversations about privilege, empathy, and the importance of treating others with respect, regardless of their background. He started to see things from a different perspective, and it was heartwarming to watch him evolve. He even suggested volunteering together at a local shelter, which I thought was a fantastic idea. It was a way for him to connect with people from different walks of life and understand their struggles firsthand. I remember my birthday last year vividly, especially the contrast between what my boyfriend could afford and what I was able to give him. My boyfriend came from a well-off family, and he always treated me with love and respect. He made it clear that money wasn't a factor in our relationship, which I really appreciated. However, as my birthday approached, I couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety about how to reciprocate his generosity. On my birthday, he surprised me with the newest iPhone. I was absolutely thrilled. It was something I had been wanting for a while, and I couldn't believe he had gotten it for me. The excitement quickly turned into guilt, though. I looked at this shiny new phone, a symbol of his generosity, and felt a wave of shame wash over me. How could I possibly match that? As I prepared for his birthday shortly after mine, I found myself racking my brain for the perfect gift. I knew he loved video games, so I decided to get him the new Spider-Man PS4 game that had just been released. It felt like a fun and thoughtful gift, but deep down I couldn't help but feel that it was nowhere near the value of the phone he had given me. When I presented him with the game, he was genuinely excited and grateful, which made me feel a bit better. But as we sat together playing it later that day, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was falling short. Here I was, enjoying this amazing gift he had given me while feeling like I was underwhelming in comparison. I worried that he might think I didn't appreciate him, or that I was somehow less committed to the relationship because I couldn't match his financial generosity. After a few days of feeling uneasy, I decided I needed to talk to him about it. I opened up about my feelings of inadequacy and how I felt guilty for not being able to give him something equally impressive. To my surprise, he listened intently and reassured me that the value of a gift doesn't lie in its price but in the thought and effort behind it. He told me that he loved the Spider-Man game and that it showed I knew him well, which meant more to him than any extravagant gift could. His understanding completely alleviated my worries. It was a huge relief to know that I didn't have to compete with his wealth to show my love. He reminded me that our relationship was built on much deeper connections and shared experiences rather than material possessions. Dating someone from a wealthy background has certainly been a journey for me, filled with experiences that have challenged my perceptions and broadened my horizons. One of the most memorable moments was when I was invited to spend the holidays with my boyfriend's family at their luxurious vacation home. Having grown up in a modest household, this trip was not just a getaway. It felt like stepping into a whole new world, one that I had only seen in movies or read about in books. As we arrived at the holiday destination, I was completely in awe of the stunning property. It was a gorgeous mansion overlooking the ocean with expansive views that seemed to stretch on forever. The architecture was breathtaking, featuring elegant design elements and beautiful decor that made the place feel warm and inviting despite its size. There were sparkling lights twinkling from the trees, and the scent of pine and the ocean mingled in the air. The moment we stepped inside, I was greeted by his family, who were genuinely warm and welcoming, making me feel at home despite my initial nerves. They insisted that everything was taken care of, and I could hardly believe my luck. It was as if I had been handed a ticket to a dream I never thought I would experience. The days that followed were filled with joy and excitement, each one more delightful than the last. We spent our mornings lounging by the pool, sipping on fresh juices and soaking up the sun. Meals were a highlight of each day, with gourmet dishes prepared by a private chef, and I found myself indulging in flavors I had never tasted before. From exquisite seafood to decadent desserts, every meal was a feast for the senses. We also participated in a range of fun holiday activities, like boat rides along the coastline and beach games that had everyone laughing and enjoying each other's company. I had never experienced anything like it before, and I felt profoundly grateful to be included in such a special family tradition. One evening, as we gathered around a beautifully decorated table for dinner, I looked around at all the smiling faces, the laughter, and the stories being shared. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. My boyfriend's family was kind and made me feel like part of the group, which eased my worries about fitting in and being different. As the holiday progressed, I found myself completely immersed in the experience. I was living in the moment, savoring every second of joy, and soaking up the love and laughter that surrounded us. It was as if I had been transported into a fairy tale, where I felt like a princess enjoying the best life had to offer. I was incredibly thankful for my boyfriend and the opportunities he had introduced me to. His kindness and generosity allowed me to step outside my comfort zone and embrace experiences that felt both foreign and exhilarating. Then towards the end of the trip, my boyfriend took me for a walk along the beach. The sun was setting, casting a beautiful golden light over everything, and it felt like a magical moment. The waves crashed gently against the shore, creating a soothing soundtrack to our stroll. As we walked hand in hand, he suddenly stopped, turned to me, and shared how much he cherished our time together. He spoke about how I had brought so much joy into his life and how grateful he was to have me by his side. My heart raced as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, and I felt a mix of anticipation and disbelief wash over me. In that moment, everything felt surreal. When he opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, I couldn't believe what was happening. He proposed right there on the beach, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the sound of the ocean. It was incredibly romantic, and I was overwhelmed with emotion. Tears of joy filled my eyes as I said yes without hesitation, feeling like the luckiest person in the world. It was a moment I had always dreamed of, yet it felt even more special because of the journey that had brought us to this point. Looking back, that holiday was a turning point in my life. Not only did I have the time of my life, but it also solidified our relationship in a way I never expected. I realized that while the differences in our backgrounds could feel intimidating at times, love truly transcends those boundaries. The proposal was a beautiful culmination of our experiences together, and I felt grateful that our relationship was built on genuine connection rather than financial disparity. In the end, I learned that love can flourish regardless of background, and those moments of joy and belonging are what truly matter. That holiday will forever hold a special place in my heart, not just for the luxurious setting, but for the love and commitment we shared. It taught me that the richness of life isn't defined by material possessions but by the experiences and connections we foster along the way. Each laugh, each shared meal, and each heartfelt conversation became a cherished memory that I would carry with